to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. Hope you had a nice weekend. How are you guys doing today?
Jenny, I had a great weekend. I've never been so excited to watch something as I was the Last Dance documentary last night. And Skip, I started rewatching it again, and I was like, man, let me get my you-know-what in the bed. I got to get up in the morning.
All I know is I don't know why we're even having a show today, because what we saw last night laid to rest any far-fetched notion that LeBron James is the GOAT. We saw the GOAT last night.
Skip, we saw like a handful of ball games. It's hard to say after watching 5 ball games that you're going to say that man was the GOAT. It was more about his aura, and what? We're going to talk about it.
We are going to talk about it. We have so much to talk about when it comes to Michael Jordan, and I want to jump right into it. Skip, good choice on your shirt today. Last night, we finally had the opportunity to watch the first 2 episodes of Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance. We learned so much along the way. I honestly couldn't look away, but one of the big takeaways was we learned that even if the Bulls were to go 82-0 in the 1997-98 season, Jerry Krause was not going to bring Phil Jackson back as head coach either way. So Shannon, let's get right to it. What was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway, Skip, was the hatred, the vitriol that Michael Jordan and so many of his teammates had towards Jerry Krause. And the open and blatant disrespect that they showed this man. Skip, I was watching it last night, as everybody, I'm sure 20, 25 million other people was watching, Skip. And Michael, asked the man, did he have diet pills in his pockets? And asked, are you going to be in the layup line? They're going to have to lower the rim. And it was reported that Scottie Pippen was hurling, it was more than yada, yada. It was open and blatant, and the harshness and the curse words that they hurled toward this man. But Skip, Jerry Krause bears a lot of responsibility for ultimately breaking this team up. But the ultimate responsibility goes to Jerry Reinsdorf, because just like he got on a plane and took his butt to Montana to sign Phil Jackson to a 1-year deal, if he wanted to keep this team together, he could have. So although Jerry Krause gets blamed, deserves some of the blame, Jerry Reinsdorf could have kept this team together. It reminds you of something that happened 5-6 years earlier, Skip, with Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones, because if Jerry wanted to keep it together, he could have. If Jerry Reinsdorf, Skip, he was the majority owner of the team. Yes, he bestowed a lot of power on Jerry Krause. Yes, he let him trade players and trade up in the draft and release players. He let him do all that. But you know one thing, Skip Bayless, having been around this game for a long period of time, when you're dealing with those high level of players and you're moving up and down in the draft, you run everything by the owner. And he ran that by the owner. And trying to trade Scottie Pippen, they entertained that. But I think they thought that, if we go this far, Jordan might walk a season earlier. Now, he later walked after the season, Skip. But another thing, Skip, I'm watching, and I know, look, like I said, I met Michael Jordan and the aura around him. He's as close to a godlike figure as I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. But, Skip, the aura around him and the way people reacted when he came into a building or he walked past them down the street, Skip, I can honestly say this. Just like there'll never be another Tiger Woods, there'll never be another Muhammad Ali. Now, they might be guys that win more golf titles than Tiger Woods. They might be a guy that wins more heavyweight and become undisputed heavyweight champion more times than Muhammad Ali. But nobody will ever have that kind of cachet. Skip, nothing like this. There'll never be another team. Because if you think about it, Skip, there have been teams that had the top 2 stars were bigger than Scottie was the second star. But if you look at Shaq, Kobe, and you look at Durant, and you look at, say, Steph Curry and what they possess, but they didn't care like this here, Skip. I mean, look, the Eagles are unbelievable, but they're not the Rolling Stones. And Skip, and that's no disrespect to Eagles fans out there, but it's just different. They were different, and they did this, Skip, 15, 20 years before social media. So can you imagine maybe the scrutiny would have gotten to him and maybe we'd have learned some things we didn't need to know. But Skip, I've never seen anything like this here. I thought I understood the aura around Michael Jordan, Skip, because when I met him, and he had just, as a matter of fact, I don't even think he had announced his retirement, maybe he had, at the Super Bowl during in January or February of '94. He was the first person I actually saw with bodyguards. You know, Skip, you see the movies and you see somebody with bodyguards and you see these gangsters and they got bodyguards. But an actual person with my own eyes, he was the first person I ever saw with that because I was only around football players. So football players didn't have bodyguards at the time. But, Skip, this was unbelievable. And to see what drove him and how it just like, and he said something, Skip, he like, and I was reading where he said, if I find somebody would have got a weakness, I take advantage of it. And I take advantage of it again. And again, and again, and again. He says, I don't let up. Zach LaVine, that's what he said. He said, I found Allie Quigley couldn't jump in the air and put the ball between her legs and lay it off the backboard. So, Skip, there goes your theory. You find somebody that has a weakness, you run it into the ground until you get the satisfaction and the results that you require, which is to win. And he wanted to win at all costs.
Wow. Are you finished? You know, it's funny
done.
to me that for a man who constantly wears a goat mask to try to convince people out there that LeBron James is even remotely even in the same conversation with Michael Jeffrey Jordan, for that kind of man, you just went on for 12 minutes. I think the show is close to over now, rhapsodizing about Michael Jeffrey Jordan. And I love it. I could sit and listen to you all day because everything you said is right on point for the first time in a long time. We're going to get to LeBron versus Michael in a few minutes. So I'm going to stay right here on the guy that I have endorsed as the one and only number 23, the original and only 23, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. It's funny that you bring up the fact that Jerry versus Jimmy fell apart fairly quickly in Dallas because I left Jerry versus Jimmy. I wrote 3 books on the Cowboys, and the last 2 dealt with Jerry versus Jimmy. And I went straight from those 3 books to becoming the lead columnist at the Chicago Tribune, right on schedule, 1997, 1998. And I was there for The Last Dance. I got to see it from the inside out. So for me, watching the documentary last night, nothing shocked me, nothing even surprised me. The upshot of it was, I was just happy that the world got to see what scoundrels Jerry Krause and, as you point out, Jerry Reinsdorf were in 97, 98, because they broke up the best defensive team I ever saw, and I think the greatest overall team I ever saw, because Jordan was at his peak. And he did have some help from Scottie Pippen and some help from Dennis Rodman and some help from Phil Jackson, a great head coach, obviously. But that team revolved around the sun and the moon. It was both sun and moon were Michael Jordan. And the point was that right away, I had a long sit-down interview with Jerry Krause, and I got to see inside this little man. And to remind people, as we talked about on Friday, this little man, as Reinsdorf, the owner, admitted last night, started out as, wait a second, a baseball scout for Reinsdorf's White Sox? That was his start as a personnel man. And if you can explain to me why Jerry Reinsdorf took a liking to this little man with a huge ego, you're beyond me. Because Jerry Reinsdorf admitted in a recent interview during the documentary last night that he was told by people in his organization, don't touch Krause. He tends to alienate people. So what did Jerry Reinsdorf do? He made him the general manager and the operator, I was going to say, of Michael Jordan's Bulls. He did not draft Michael Jordan. As we saw last night, Rod Thorne drafted him, and he fell into Rod Thorne's lap, obviously, as the 3rd overall pick. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But the point was that Jerry Krause got lifted by Michael Jordan into the national spotlight. And I was just glad that people nationally could see what a mess Jerry Krause made of that organization. He did draft Scottie Pippen, but Scottie Pippen was on everybody's radar coming out of Central Arkansas. And Jerry Krause's ego got so big that he began to clash, obviously, with Phil Jackson, who actually did what Jimmy Johnson did to Jerry Jones, which was say, who are you? You haven't earned the right to be part of this. Well, I always defended Jerry because at least Jerry played college football. He's a starter at Arkansas with Jimmy on a national championship team in 1964. Jerry Krause says he played high school baseball at Taft High School in Chicago. I have a hard time even believing that. Said he was a catcher. I don't know about that, but I do know he had no background in basketball to speak of until Jerry Reinsdorf made him his henchman running the Bulls. He was the bad cop, and he did Jerry Reinsdorf's bidding. And Shannon, to your point, the shocking quote to me last night was from Jerry Reinsdorf in a recent interview. This interview wasn't 1998. It was done recently for the documentary. And he said that he and Jerry Krause decided going into 97, 98, that except for Michael, all the other players were nearing the ends of their careers. What? I was there. Scottie Pippen went on and played 6 more years. I can go right down the list. Everybody went on to play somewhere else. They were not nearing the end of their careers. We're going to debate this later in the show.